Check, 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 check. Oh yeah, you can hear me. Excellent. Good. Okay, namaskar everybody. My name is Upen Barve. I'm very honored to be here. Sarvajana Hitaya, Sarvajana Sukhaya. That means welfare for all and happiness for all. A fantastic get-together of brilliant minds. And I'm really honored. Again, thanks again for Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, the Joint Secretary Sanjeev Singh ji, of course the Ministry of Electronic Information and Technology. I actually like their short form MIGHTY. That's pretty cool, no? And of course, all the coordinators to get such a fantastic get-together, a global platform really, and our partners, Jaja Bor, the German-Indian Innovation Corridor, together we are happy to bring in the session today. The session today is really about AI for industries. AI for industries with resilience, innovation, and efficiency. GIIC is German Indian Innovation Corridor, really focused on bundling many roads into a single super express highway, or the Autobahn as we call, right? A very consequential innovation ecosystem between Europe and India, with Germany being the central integrator, so that we can shape the next generation of progress for society and also economic progress with industrial, digital, and climate systems. And not just through that, there is a big opportunity and a mission to unlock a potential 3 trillion euro opportunity over here. Not to think about 3x, but 30x. And to that, GIC has several key programs, innovation scouting, think tanks, to landing pads, deep tech hubs, many partnerships that we connect different ecosystems. But let's go to the main topic here today, and that's why we have fantastic people on the panel and the audience as well. It's really AI for industries. There have been many definitions of it, right? So we like to always have a good working definition. For me, it's clearly, application of all these new technologies, artificial intelligence, to really optimize these different sectors, processes, whether it's in manufacturing, energy, or aerospace, logistics. These are all related, primary and, let's say, the secondary parts of the industry. Has been in the past growing a lot into automation, right? Automation with predictive analysis or getting efficiency gains and so on. But what I mean to say is it's fundamentally very, very different compared to the general AI that's being taught about a lot and that's entered your and my life since a few years. We need to focus on real-world industrial challenges. And there are two things, two A's that you can take together. With human in the center, it's the augmentation. Who are we augmenting? Which enterprises, which humans? And how can we manage that process from automation into autonomy? And how can we have those autonomous ecosystems that can work together based on the trust? Not only human-to-human trust, but also human-to-digital and digital-to-human trust. Because we are living in an era where, yes, if something is not yet connected, it will be connected very soon. We're looking at new business models and economies where we probably don't want to own anything, but we want to access everything. And AI has been, predominantly supporting that part as well. But the skills of humans, all of us around, are very, very important. This is a very unlikely scenario when you look at, core industries. So how do we transform the industries now? One way to really look at is articulation of futures. And I'm a trained futurist. And if you just take data, it will tell you, oh, water levels are rising, there's a lot of rainfall, there's climate issues, so London can go underwater. But that's just one dimension. You look at the data, put the data together, but that's not our job. Our job is actually that data plus our imagination and the inventions and innovations we are driving. The same outlook turns into something where we can be proud of, to focus on the new profit, which is people, planet, and purpose. And this is going to help us shape the industries and think about shaping new industries. We shouldn't forget that these are exactly the industries which are facing the problems today with skills, with imbalance in terms of energy. But if you look at, our friends in World Economic Forum have done this, and I really like it. AI in industries is not a technology play, right? It can be. So how do we look at, because if you see the short-term and the long-term risks here, only 2 or 3 are actually technological. We need to look at design. We need to, there is another problem, I call it value of tiers, right? It's a lot of data is just not accessible. Look at the small and mid-sized segment, which is going to be key in really adopting that AI. How do we take care of that? The data, bring it, make it relevant for AI, so AI becomes more meaningful for industries to start shaping the future. Shaping the future, AI is also supporting another level where it's helping the scientists. This, what you see, is actually wood. It's transparent. The scientists have been able to take out the opacity, but on the right, what you see is actually it's not a glass. Well, it's a glass, but it's a solar cell now. So what will it mean for the industries, for the businesses that are building facades like that? You can actually produce energy where it is required. We are using a lot of AI-driven design, and here's an example from Matrika, which enables us to reform and reshape a completely new industry. And and that's I think all for all of us to discuss how we can shape, transform the now, but shape the future of these industries. I believe we need a holistic approach. We need to think design, not only technology, and we need to look at the new shop floors probably with human-machine teaming. There will be robots, cobots, machines, and humans all in single play. How do we work for on those scenarios with trust? But we will discuss this today, and we'll discuss exactly how we can move forward. And this was just a teaser for you to think about that the problem of adoption is a bit larger, right? So we have a star panel with us today, and I'd like to hand over to my partner and colleague, CEO, a dashing CEO, Upasna Dash, for running the panel now. Upasna, all yours. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Upen. And on behalf of the German India Innovation Corridor, Jajbor Brand Consultancy, welcome to what is going to be a very important and a very, very profound action panel. So firstly, this is a historic week for all of us in India to have the AI Summit here. And the fundamentals of this summit are actually threefold: people, planet, and progress. And in line with that, what we've convened today is a very important and strategic action panel. We're very lucky today to be joined by voices representing some of the world's most important companies and some of India's most iconic startups, all working under the framework of AI, and also bringing together the innovation and the cross-border exchange between two very important economies, Germany and India. On that note, I would like to kick off. And my first question before I begin, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have with us today Dr. Lavneesh Anna, Asia Pacific Head of Government Affairs at SAP. Welcome. We have Madhav Krishna, founder and CEO of Vahan.ai. We have Ms. Swati Sham Sundar, Head of Research Group, Associate Vice President, Siemens. And we have Mr. Priyadarshi Mohapatra, founder and CEO of Curated. Welcome to the panel, everybody. Great. And on that note, I will kick off. And my first question is for you, Dr. Chana. Thank you so much for being with us. You have a very strategic view of what's happening in the ecosystem. And from your point of view, where do you think AI is genuinely scaling today? And where do you think it's really getting stuck? What do we really take to do to move it from pilot to production?
Thank you so much. Indeed, a privilege to be with all of you on this very important topic on enterprise or industry use of AI. As we move from the digital India to digitally intelligent India, I think enterprise use of AI will play a significant role. And that's where I wanted to start before I go into the pilot to scaling discussion, is probably the need to have a differentiated view to enterprise use of AI and consumer use of AI. So that is where, in terms of the business use of AI, probably we are looking at a far lower hanging fruit in terms of quick adoption, in terms of the boundary and context, in terms of the lower risks of bias, of safety, of this vis-a-vis. So I always use this analogy that consumer use of AI can be seen as the light bulb, lightning everybody, but it's the enterprise use of AI which is the powerhouse, which is the power plant at the back, which is actually pushing all this. And that's where it's and if you see, this power plant is already accelerating. We did a survey recently as SAP with the Oxford Economics. 23% of all business processes today, as per Indian organizations, are already supported by AI. That's where, and the expectation is it will go to 41% in the next 2 years. That's the velocity of acceleration. 93% of the CXOs or CEOs that we surveyed believe that they will get a positive return on their AI investments in 1 to 3 years. That's the level of the confidence now. But at the same time, only 9% said that we are viewing it holistically, because the experience from pilot to scaling that's where we come in. So that brings to the why part to the what. More importantly is the how do we now scale it? How do we now take it forward that it becomes a journey from hype to reality? It becomes a journey from a verticalized approach that I took to a horizontal embedded approach in my strategy. So the first, obviously, step that all of us are now realizing as we start absorbing AI into our business processes, that we need to now move to hard metrics of measurement in terms of outcome. And that is what will motivate people. That is what will motivate industry peers to learn from each other, rather than the sheer enthusiasm of technology pull or technology push that all of us were giving. Second thing that we are realizing is we need to look at AI. If I look at AI as a tree, data is my soil. I think most of us are now realizing that you cannot grow roses in a rocky soil, in a rocky terrain, or you cannot grow a healthy AI on a toxic soil of data. That is where the realization, and the same survey that we did, 72% of the respondents said that they feel they are still not data ready. That's where is a big issue, and that is a prescriptive way to look at, by embedding AI into the business processes, probably by converting into a horizontal, the data layer we are automatically trying to solve. And third, obviously, is you cannot run faster than the ship you are traveling in. So the regulatory ecosystem, the regulatory guidelines, the geopolitical also have a big impact, and most of us have a different view, but DPDP in India, for that matter, can actually provide a guardrail and a boundary or in which we can actually scale. So then somebody will ask, hey, what's the next step forward? I think we have spoken enough on ROI, initiatives, that is return on investment. We now need to, I can propose an impact framework, that is the return on impact that we are creating. And if I expand this impact, to me, frankly, is infrastructure. Infrastructure that is the interoperability, the digital platform. M definitely is the measurable outcomes. That is where the pilots will scale. And mind you, the experience is repeatedly showing that while the pilots can be underwhelming, the return is non-linear. Probably at the later stage, the return is exponential. So one learning that probably there is settling in is the return on investment on AI is non-linear. P obviously is policy and guardrails, as I mentioned. A is AI as a horizontal and not as a vertical. Now we have done enough on looking at it as a vertical. We now need to look at even as an enterprise user of or adopters of AI, we cannot do away without the thought of C, that is the citizen centricity. And T obviously is my talent. If I use this framework across this, the scaling to pilot, and mind you, most of us are looking at this as a value which is in the short to medium term. we now need to look at a framework of strategic asset, and that's where each one of us putting together will take us to a digitally intelligent India with a Viksit Bharat dream that all of us are moving forward.
Thank you so much for that. Some very important insights, and I think a big takeaway of that is that AI from a horizontal lens and not vertical. On that note, Swati, you bring to the table again a very innovative lens on looking at how both Germany and India, while separate economies, also have so much in common. And from that point of view, I'd love to know from you, where do you think both of these ecosystems can truly learn from each other, and what can they learn?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope now you can hear me. Yes. It's a very interesting question also to look at it from the ecosystems and the economies standpoint, right? And Germany and India both bring in very complementary competencies. I mean, on the one hand, we have Germany, which comes with its manufacturing prowess, with its rigor in enterprise infrastructure as well as regulation. And on the same note, you have India with leading in agility in R&D implementation speed as well as the digital edge that we all possess. And Dr. Chana already spoke about the difference between consumer AI and enterprise AI, and specifically when it comes to industries and scaling software as well as hardware offerings to billions of users. We believe that this handshake between both the economies has a key role to play, right? How do you build these scaling systems for billions of users, but in cost innovative ways, specifically in sectors like healthcare, like manufacturing, like process, like automation, mobility, and so on and so forth. And at specifically Siemens, a lot of these challenges have both the global dimension as well as the regional dimension, right? The problems of data readiness were already articulated very well by both Upin and by Dr. Chanana. It's not only about the AI that has been democratized, because I think today we are able to see very nice looking showcases, prototypes, and the goal is to take all of this to production, to really the shop floor, but there is still that gap, that barrier that needs to be crossed from taking these POCs, these prototypes into action, right? While making sure that there is robustness, that there is reliability in these operations. Now, beyond data, there's also the mindset factor, right? We as humans, we are no longer the only active workers on factory. We are operating amidst cobots, collaborative robots, amidst autonomous agents. And this requires a mindset shift in the way that we interface, in the way that we interact. And that, I think, from both the economy standpoint, is not a challenge, but an opportunity that we're yet to leverage fully. And here, the ecosystem has also a crucial role to play. We're looking at it not only from an enterprise collaboration standpoint, but what we at Siemens also refer to as the research and innovation ecosystem, right? We're including startups, private and public partnerships with several companies, universities, as well as research institutes on both sides. And GIIC also as a catalyst here in making these many-to-many handshake fruitful, right? So I think more than challenges, we are up for a lot of opportunity. And beyond the democratization of AI that has already happened, how we can leverage this in order to make industrial AI a reality, really.
Thank you so much, Swati. And I think you reaffirmed the fact that both Germany and India are more alike than apart. And I think the next decade is going to show us a lot more of how they can both learn from each other. Great. Moving on, Priyo, you're doing some extremely important work in healthcare in India, and especially in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. From your point of view, right, what is your take on how AI is really going to change the way Indian healthcare is going to work, and the work that you've already done so far? What have been your biggest learnings?
Thanks, Upasna. Thanks for asking me. Just to set the context, We're trying to solve for rural healthcare. And when you visualize rural healthcare, you visualize this primary healthcare centers. I heard somebody saying dingy lighting. You'll be very lucky to find doctors there. Most of the time, there'll be no doctors. You'll be lucky to find paramedics. If you visit the coastal belt, you will see PHCs where probably cattle and dogs will be roaming around. This is a problem impacting 1 billion people in this country. Most of our healthcare infrastructure, if you look at it, we have world-class infrastructure, is all restricted to the top 8 cities or state capital, at most catering to 300, 350 million urban, semi-urban population. So for us to solve this problem for 1 billion people, using technology and AI was not a choice. It was the only way. Because there is no way you could send doctors to these remote, medically underserved locations. So we had to think very differently. So we created an approach which was hybrid in nature. We built the platform. We set up clinics on one side, a very robust tech platform. But to engage with a rural audience and make them health aware was extremely difficult. Because unlike you and me, and I call us privileged, if we have a health issue, our family, our peer group, everybody tell us, take a day off, go and meet the doctor. For them, they're constantly debating it's 1 day loss of income. Can I procrastinate? So when you're catching them, you're actually catching them at a time when the condition is either acute or chronic. Let me give you an example. A lot of them chew betel nut. And when you start chewing betel nut, you start developing early signs of oral cancer. You will have difficulty in opening your jaws. So to make it easier, as an anesthesia, you eat more betel nuts. So you're accelerating the process. Now we created a very interesting product. We trained people in rural and we called them Swasthya Mitras and say, hey, go meet somebody. All of them are chewing betel nut. Just tell them, I'll take photographs of your teeth, upper jaw, lower jaw. And instantly I'll tell you a risk stratification. Where do you stand, and send it as a report. Now the idea was not to create fear. Because if you create fear, you fail. The idea was to tell them, hey, there could be a risk. By the way, there is a clinic available right next to you, which is completely tech managed. Walk in there and we'll get a doctor to see you. So for me, using AI was part of the journey. The journey was to reach out to billions, to screen them, create risk stratification, but then close the loop by providing them healthcare intervention from the physical healthcare world. So technology plays a very important role, and I think that's where intelligent technology plays a very important role, to handhold them through this frictionlessly from one environment to the other. I gave you an example of oral healthcare. Look at breast cancer. In India, 1 out of 2 people detected dies. 50% is mortality rate. If detected early, the success rate is 95% plus. How do you even screen people? Expensive mammography devices can't be done. So you use technology, you use interesting AI products to screen and again do risk stratification, but don't make it conclusive. Figure out the high-risk cases, get them to a clinic, get them to meet a doctor. So AI for us was more about trust, transparency, translation, and texture, more than coding or more than creating a fancy product and ensuring that it reaches the people.
Thank you so much, Priyo. And this is so interesting to see the kind of work that CureBay is doing on the ground level. So thank you. Madhav, no conversation on AI is complete without talking about the informal labor market. And, 2 things that you've done, which is very interesting, is you chose to come back to India and build here. And you chose to solve a very, very difficult and unorganized problem. So first off, what's that experience been like? And what role is AI really taking in shaping the way you're building this business?
Thanks, Upasana. Great to be here to talk to everybody. I'll contextualize my response with a little more detail on what we do at my company, Vahan.ai. What we are trying to build is an AI recruiter for India's massive blue-collar workforce. 80% of the labor workforce in India is blue-collar. And when we say blue-collar, obviously the definition is very fluid, but you can think of people as low-skilled, right? So people who, let's say, work in a factory, or your security guard, or the person who delivers your food these days, right? These are all blue-collar, let's say. What we found was that, and as you mentioned, Upasana, the hiring ecosystem for blue-collar workers in India is very, very fragmented. In fact, it turns out that there are hundreds of thousands of local recruitment agencies that do a bulk of the hiring in this space. And that's also because trust is a very, very key element for people in general, and especially people from Bharat, when they're searching for a job. So you'll usually find that people will look for jobs through their mama, chacha, bhaiya network or through a local recruitment agency. So the question is, how do you use technology to maybe replicate that trust or leverage that trust? It turns out that it's not really possible. And so what we've done instead is we've built what was termed as an augmentation sort of approach earlier, where we've aggregated over 3,000 human recruiters who work at local agencies on our platform across over 900 cities in India. And we are providing our AI recruiter as a tool to these human recruiters. So the human recruiter will typically source somebody who's looking for a job on the ground, perhaps locally, and then they will enter their information into our platform, which is when our AI recruiter takes over. It gives them a call. It's able to talk to them in multiple Indian languages. It's able to ask them basic questions. What is their name? Where are they from? What are they looking for? Any educational background? It matches them with a job. It's able to answer some basic FAQs. The first FAQ is always salary kitni hogi, paise kitne milenge. So obviously, those types of questions. And then it proceeds from there to the onboarding process, interviewing process, etc. And anywhere where we see a candidate dropping off or showing signs of slowing down, that's when we reintroduce the human recruiter. Right? This is called a human-in-the-loop system, where you bring the human back into the automation or the workflow. And we're finding that is absolutely critical. Again, in a place like India, where trust is incredibly important to deliver services, especially services that are high stakes or that are complex, a human plus AI approach works much, much better than an AI approach or a human-only approach. In fact, we find that if a human recruiter was able to get, let's say, 1 person hired a day, when they use the AI, they can get 5 hired a day. And this is still very, very early days. The technology is absolutely in its nascency. In 2 to 5 years, that 5 could become 50. That's our goal, right? So we're able to help the human recruiter obviously earn more money because they are much more productive. More people are able to get jobs in a shorter amount of time, and of course, employers are able to hire more in a shorter amount of time as well. Right? So it's a very natural human plus AI use case or an augmentation use case, which is driving much higher productivity and is also helping people gain access to employment.
Thank you so much, Madhavan. It's so great to see this use case up and kicking in the Indian market right now. Amazing. While we're moving now, unfortunately, to the second half and the closing of our panel, I want each of you to actually give us an overview from your point of view and your expertise on how AI is really going to change. What is going to be that one seismic shift? And I'd like to, start with you, Lavnesh. You have a very interesting macroeconomic point of view. So if we were to call out this one big thing that we should all brace for, what should that be?
So there are 2 parts. One is, if I'm an enterprise, outside-in perspective, and then the inside-out perspective. The outside-in perspective, is that you need to be clear on the data and the readiness and enabling, ecosystem for AI, than for AI itself. That is a learning that all of us are getting into. From an inside-out perspective, I think the 3 R's that are very important: reliable, relevance, and responsible. And we have seen that if you have the data layer ready, reliability is taken care of. If you embed AI as a horizontal into the business process, the relevance is taken care of. And responsible, that is the ethics, that is all we have now experienced, that everything, the maximum impact can be changed at the design state itself. The maximum impact can be achieved at the design stage and not really at the implementation when you go back and correct. So the 3 R's from an inside-out perspective and from an outside-in perspective, the ecosystem will, for some time, will remain fragmented, particularly for those who are actually working cross borders in terms of the data flows and whatnot. The ecosystem will definitely remain fragmented. So don't expect that we will have everything smooth as we go forward. Particularly when it comes to the critical sector definition and the critical data definition, as we are moving, the impact of geopolitics would be far more. Very easy for Madhav to recruit a person for manufacturing, but very difficult to recruit for a security printing press which prints the notes. The government will say, no, I want to check the person. So that criticality of data sensitivity and data criticality and the classification will be the next wave that all of us sitting in this room will sooner than later get involved. And that's where we will see a mature curve evolving, and all of us, when we meet next, we will be talking on a stable AI path, then this zigzag path that all of us are on.
Thank you so much for that, Ravneesh. Swati, I'd love for you to step in. One big thing that we should be bracing ourselves for, and also as a woman in the ecosystem, right? What can we do to get more and more women involved in this conversation?
There are multiple facets to this, right? What Madhav was explaining earlier is this concept of skilled workers. If we also talk about industry at large, right, there's a huge dearth of knowledge workers, or what we call skilled workers, right? And in aging economies, specifically around the Europe and the like, there's really an aging population, which makes it very difficult to also ramp up skilled labor. And in the industrial domain, what this also means, I mean, if we take the example of manufacturing and specifically engineering there, we're looking at people that could build automation scripts, automation code, and there's a handful of people globally that can do this in domains like digital automation and so on. Now, what this means is we have AI, but could we leverage AI in order to bridge this knowledge worker gap, right? That's one of the challenges that we face. And apart from that, there's bringing together of these knowledge workers in an ecosystem where AI and humans can collaborate very seamlessly. So we at Siemens, we look at AI more as empowering for these factory workers, as enabling these factory workers, and not so much to eliminate or to replace them. Human in the loop, or what we actually call expert in the loop, right? So we're not looking at removing the expert anytime soon. So also going forward, they will have a much more stronger role to play. They will be reskilling, they will be upskilling, and a lot of personnel development is going to happen, right? So we're not looking at jeopardizing the job market, the workforce, because I think that's also a conversation that happens, right? With AI becoming so prominent, will we have a huge impact, a negative impact to the job industry? And that's, I think, not so much the case. We will have much more fertile workforce where these skilled workers can focus more on more complex activities. And what technology could mean, and where we see promising research still upcoming, is a few areas. Now, we, in this session, but also in the past sessions today, looked a lot at language models, at foundation models. And when it comes to industry now, we're no longer in the consumer space, we're in the industrial space, and therefore we're looking at building the foundation models for industry, right? What that means is to build something that the engineers, that the operators, that the technicians can interact with and can use to tackle challenges in a language that they are familiar with. And we're talking here engineering drawings, engineering schematics, 2D, 3D simulation, time series data from the edge, from IoT, and so on, right? So models which can naturally understand, which can naturally interpret and interact in these modalities. So that's one area. The other area happens to be in trust and governance, right? So with AI becoming more and more autonomous, how can we still make sure that they are trustworthy, they are reliable, they are robust? So there's the EU AI Data Act, there's DP for India, there's equivalents in almost all geographies, including China and the US. And building, especially taking into mind these regulations and standard policies, is imperative for us. And in order to do this, we also look at how we can bring together these more forward-looking technologies, but also more classical ones like symbolic AI, like neurosymbolic AI, and so on, and bridge the gap a little bit. And in all of this, how we can leverage the ecosystem, right? So we have at Siemens a lot of also training engagements, partnerships for vocational education of the workforce, and last but not least, I think we're looking at moving beyond becoming AI ready to becoming more AI native. And I think that's pretty much where we're headed.
Thank you so much for that, Swati. Priya, I'd love for you to step in right now and quickly tell us, what is the big shift we should be bracing for in the healthcare ecosystem from your point of view?
Yeah, so if I wear the healthcare lens, I think two parts. First is building the right foundation for things to move from being a fashionable thing to do to be a real thing to impact life. Healthcare, there are tons of data available with every hospital because a surgical discharge summary is full of data. How much of that is usable? You don't even have the patient's consent. Can you remove PII from that data? Can you create homogeneous code? Answer to all of this is no. So none of this data without a patient's consent can be used. So you need to build that foundation where you have consent so that you're able to remove PII, work on that data to create trends. Otherwise, it's theory. Second most important thing is there's going to be a convergence of ecosystems. There's a medtech ecosystem which is advancing like crazy. There is a wearable ecosystem which is giving you data real time and creating very interesting dashboards. There is a digital healthcare ecosystem of EHRs. But then there is a physical healthcare ecosystem of doctors, hospitals, labs. You got to frictionlessly move people's journey as a personalized, curated healthcare journey, which is going to move from seeking care to moving to preventive. And this will only happen when you move them from this metaverse of different ecosystems to the real physical healthcare ecosystem, where the final opinion is coming from a qualified doctor. But that doctor's load has been significantly reduced because you have done screening, you have done risk stratification, and given them inputs and insights for them to take a call, and probably similar to what Madhav was saying, be far more productive in a country from being doctor scarce to doctor amplified. That's the future I'm looking at.
Thank you so much for that, Priyo. And Madhav, would love to hear from you finally. What is like the one big catalyst that you think is going to shape the way the informal economy is going to work and the role AI is going to play?
I think India's biggest opportunity with this whole AI revolution is leveraging some of our key data assets, perhaps, which, of course, in our context, mean very different things. Language, for example, India has over 20 major languages, thousands of dialects, but most of these languages have no digital footprint. 97%, I think, of the internet is English, for instance. And I think Tamil is the most highly represented Indian language on the internet. Right? Most Indian languages don't have any digital footprint, which means that even building AI in Indian languages or for Indian languages is actually a very, very difficult task. Right? And then, of course, if you talk about medical data, you talk about other types of data sets, right? That opens up a huge Pandora's box. So I think India's advantage will come from, one, ensuring we can digitize some of these assets and then use them to create models that can serve our people in the most beneficial way possible. And I think the other thing that we sit on is a very, very large young population. India has over 900 million people in the ages of 18 to 60. So we are the youngest working population in the world and growing. I think Swati mentioned a lot of countries now are in population decline, including Western Europe, including China, Japan, of course. India, I think, is the only country which has a large and growing young population. If we are to really sort of reap our demographic dividend, I think AI will play a massive role in helping all our people, many of whom, of course, do not have the education or skills required to be productive. But AI then can play a very, very key role in bridging that gap, right? And I think AI could become perhaps the most impactful engine for inclusion, rather, for us, hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And unfortunately, that is all the time we had on this panel. To all of our panelists, thank you. A huge round of applause for them, please. And like we said, the idea of, GIIC and us bringing this together was this is not a conversational panel, this was an action panel. And all of these leaders here today really kicked off what is, I believe, a beginning of a very, very important discourse. On that note, we have one very, very special guest coming in to, talk to us about a very special pathway. Srinivasan Kolpare, please do come up on stage.
Maybe this is better.
Yeah.
This works.
As someone who's been in the startup ecosystem for more than a decade, he's been responsible for building some of India's most important startup ecosystems, including T-Hub, and is now working very closely in venture building. So, Srinivasan, over to you.
Thank you all for such an incredible session. So many insights across so many different topics. A lot for us to decode. I just wanted to address a few basic things, right? The core of this session is resilience, innovation, and efficiency. And I just wanted to talk very quickly about what those three things mean. Resilience obviously means, and this is absolutely critical in today's geopolitical system, industries that can adapt when supply chains break, when markets shift, and when crises hit. Innovation, of course, is fundamental transformation. Not just marginal improvements. And efficiency obviously means doing more with less, but intelligently, not just cutting costs. AI is one thing that can do all three of those things simultaneously. Only if we deploy it right, though. And one thing I want to point out, because AI to a lot of people is a technology, that's not enough. It has to be an industrial competitiveness conversation. The next decade is not going to be defined by the better AI models, although that is what's going on right now. It's actually going to be defined by AI-powered industries. We need a fundamental transition from AI adoption to AI integration. And as we've heard from our panel, that is not easy. There's a lot for us to think through here. Countries that adopt and embed AI into manufacturing, healthcare, energy, logistics, they're the ones that are going to lead. And this is a global conversation. Inside this room, we have people from multiple countries in Europe and, of course, across India as well. And I just want to bring to the table what India and Europe have to add to this, right? India brings speed, our digital infrastructure at scale, our engineering talent, and the hunger to build. Europe brings industrial depth, regulatory frameworks that create trust, and they're leading the way on that one. And of course, capital that thinks long term. We need to bring some of that too, and neither of us can win this race alone. I just want to say thank you to GIIC and JBC for building this bridge and convening the leaders in this room who are making it real and adding value to all of us with this conversation. To everyone here, whether you're building in New Delhi, Berlin, or anywhere across the world, we need founders who understand both AI and industry. We need investors who back true transformation at both a local and a global scale. And actually, that's a place I think India needs to step up. We need industrial leaders who are willing to move from pilots to production, because that's where transformation actually happens. And as we've all said, we haven't quite got there yet, but we're on the path. Finally, we need policymakers who see industrial AI as strategic infrastructure, not innovation theater. The opportunity isn't in one geography. It's in the connection between them, and the opportunity is huge. Thank you again to both JIIC and JBC for making this happen.
Thank you. Wow, thank you very much. Great words, and thank you to all the panelists. Before I really get into the closing, it's always we said it's an action panel. So what's next, right? What's next we know is clearly that never in the human history has the present been so temporary. So it's time to take action now. We looked at AI for industries. We looked at its definition, the transformation potential and everybody's ability. We want to bring that together, via getting all these key players, a lot of them in the room, some existing partners, some to-be partners, policymakers, startups, academia, to manage this change forward together with Europe and India as collaboration. To that effect, I'd like to make a quick few announcements that might interest you. Number one, the GIC agenda for 2026. 4 focus areas: manufacturing, mobility, aerospace, defense, and health. This is where we'll see a lot of programs coming in. Of course, we have another big one where a lot of this will converge. All the year-round activities is I welcome all of you to Berlin, 28th and 29th of September. That's where we will have the German-Indian Innovation Summit Edition 2. On top of that, what we're working on currently is a German-Indian Open Innovation Initiative. You see the full stack and different topics. This is backed up by 10 corporates and VCs on both sides, as well as the right monetization models, and we have the complete infrastructure for that. Next up, for all the Indian startup enthusiasts who want to come up and explore Germany, explore Europe via Germany, we have set up a India desk at Neuland, which is a largest innovation space of Europe, is based in Berlin. And finally, in preparation, and particularly today, I'm very, very happy to share that we're working on a framework for democratic alliance on AI. In today's, this is very, very important with the strengths, and you made the comments on the EU AI Act, but also the Europe, which is made, it's going to be very, very sensitive around all the usage and very good in regulatory ways, and India on a very fast track. I believe we have a good way to work on this jointly, and we're going to kick off during the course of the week the Democratic AI Initiative as well. With that, I'd like to say thank you not only to you, but first of all to the panelists as well. Big round of applause, please.
Thank you so much. Before we close, a token of appreciation and thanks to all of our speakers. Thank you so much, everyone. Meti, the nodal officers from Invest India, thank you so much for coordinating. You guys might not be seeing these folks in the chaos outside, but there's a bunch of amazing kids running around behind, ensuring that everything goes on time. Please give a round of applause for them as well. Upen, he left his laptop and Upen.